Looking at this photograph of Earth, the Middle East sits directly in the center of the frame. To understand how fragile our current reality is, we have to isolate a specific window in time, the 7th century, and remove a single historical variable. As we trace over these shifting desert sands in the Arabian Peninsula, we are looking at a region that remains completely decentralized. In this alternate timeline, the local tribes never unify under a single religious and political banner. There is no new, expanding state pushing outward from the desert. Without a unified force surging north, the architecture of power remains static. This Byzantine-style brick church represents an empire that gets to keep its wealth and its vast territories intact, completely free from the pressures of a new southern rival. To the east, the same stability takes hold. This ancient stone relief carving depicts the Persian or Sassanid Empire. Because they never face a rapid conquest, their centuries-old cultural and political structures survive in a continuous, unbroken line. Two massive, stable empires effectively seal off the traditional northwestern invasion routes into the Indian subcontinent. The geopolitical buffer holds, locking human development onto an entirely different track. Protected by those massive buffer states to the west, the Indian subcontinent enters an era insulated from external military shocks. Generations live and die without seeing a foreign army cross the mountains. These red brick ruins belong to Nalanda University. In our timeline, places like this were destroyed by invading forces. In this reality, these ancient centers of learning survive, expanding their libraries and drawing scholars from across the globe for hundreds of uninterrupted years. Down south, powers like the Chola dynasty turn their full attention toward the water. Instead of bracing for land disputes, they pour their resources into shipbuilding, constructing massive naval fleets that secure the surrounding oceans. Without a rising Middle Eastern caliphate competing for control of the seas, Indian merchants lock down a total monopoly on global ocean trade routes. Centuries of continuous peace result in massive intellectual and economic accumulation. The vast majority of the world's wealth, maritime power, and academic resources permanently anchor themselves in the East. Because the medieval invasions from the northwest never happened, the entire political structure of medieval India is different. There is no Delhi Sultanate, and the Mughal Empire never exists. Instead, the light-colored stone domes of fortresses like this one shelter massive, wealthy indigenous kingdoms. In the north, states like Rajputana consolidate their power, absorbing regional wealth and expanding their native architectural and administrative styles. This panoramic view of the Virupaksha temple complex reveals the scale of the Vijayanagara Empire in the south. Unchallenged by northern sultans, they operate as a sheer economic and architectural powerhouse, managing the continent's internal production. As this map illustrates, the ancient overland Silk Route and the massive ocean networks merge. Every major global supply chain of spices, textiles, and precious metals converges directly into the ports of these unified Indian empires. By the time the age of global maritime exploration begins, European sailors are not sailing toward a fractured, vulnerable territory. They are sailing toward a heavily fortified network of military superpowers. When European naval fleets finally arrive in the 18th century, their strategy is standard: exploit local divisions, arm rival factions, and conquer from within. But they hit a wall. They face heavily fortified coastlines managed by unified militaries, backed by economies far larger and wealthier than their own. The British, Portuguese, and French are completely outmatched militarily. They are repelled at the ports and forced to accept strictly regulated, heavily taxed trading partnerships. Looking at these Indian railways trains, we see the result of unbroken sovereignty. Because their resources were never extracted by colonizers, these empires fund and control their own industrialization. By maintaining sovereign control over their capital, they manage the transition to coal and steam. The wealth remains in local banks, allowing for a self-funded industrial shift. The most critical geopolitical result of this timeline arrives in the modern era. Because the region was never conquered by an external religion, there is no religious fault line to force a 20th century partition. This map highlights a continuous, undivided megastate. It possesses the combined demographics, natural resources, and geographic scale of modern-day India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, all operating under a single economic engine. A unified economy of that size, running on 1,000 years of unbroken academic progress, accelerates scientific and technological advancement well past its Western equivalents. This rocket represents the culmination of that lead. While other nations struggle with resource scarcity, this undivided state establishes permanent outposts on the lunar surface, supported by an engineering sector that has been compounding its technical knowledge for centuries. In this timeline, the global center of gravity never shifted to the west. The 21st century is defined by this single, unbroken economic superpower, the direct result of 1,300 years of compounding stability and wealth. Watching this sprawling metropolis operate, we see a world where ancient stone architecture seamlessly supports glowing, high-tech infrastructure. Yet the existence of this entire reality depends on the absence of a single event, thousands of miles away in the Arabian desert. One missing variable rewrites the destinies of billions of people. History is rarely directed purely by the strength of physical armies. The deepest changes are driven by the unstoppable gravitational pull of new ideas and beliefs. While this timeline is just a thought experiment, it exposes how fragile our civilization is. Every border, every language, and every modern economy is tied to decisions made by small groups of people centuries ago. Looking back at the Earth as we know it, we are left to weigh the sheer scale of consequence that stems from a single historical spark. The world we actually live in is just one of many possible paths.